Okay, so this is Women's Health Farm Part 2. So this will cover PowerPoints 3 and a little bit of 4. So we're going to start with drugs for infertility. And the first one is clomiphene or Clomid. And so I thought Clomid sound like clove, so I have a clove of garlic here. And the MOA is that it binds to estrogen receptors, induces ovulation by increased output of pituitary gonadotropins. And so to remember estrogen receptors, I thought estrogen sounded like Easter, kind of. So we have an Easter egg representing one of the lobes of the pituitary, which helps you remember the pituitary gonadotropins. Over here are just some adverse effects. So ovarian swelling, hyperstimulation, flushing. So I drew a toilet for flushing. Cancer, we know that increased estrogen can cause cancer. And so basically that's kind of what this is doing. It's stimulating a lot of, the ovaries to produce a lot of hormones. And then along with that comes hormonal embolism. So that is what this is. So also for infertility, you can use letrozole. And so I thought letro sounded like let go. So this is a lady who is letting go of a balloon. And the MOA is that it is an aromatase inhibitor. So aromatase is kind of like aroma. So this is a aromatherapy candle. And then the adverse effects are osteoporosis, thromboembolism, hot flashes, and then arthralgia, which kind of goes along with that osteoporosis here. Next is Ganirelix or Antagon. So I have a polygon shape here with an ant on it. So ant on a polygon, Antagon. The MOA is that it is a GnRH antagonist. So you can remember antagonist because it's an ant. And then GnRH comes from the pituitary. So there's pituitary in this picture, and there's also some blocks because it blocks LHRH in the pituitary. And adverse effects are ovarian hyperstimulation. If we just think about this logically, again, it's kind of stimulating a lot of hormones. And so, yeah, you can get hyperstimulation and then injection site reactions because it's an IM injection. So those are your 3 drugs for infertility. You have Clomid, letrozole, and Antagon. For ectopic pregnancy, you can use methotrexate. This is a picture that I previously had drawn, and I thought it sounded like metho T-Rex 8. And so in this picture, the T-Rex 8, 2 water horses or 2 hydrofolic acid. So foals as in horse, they're blue. So it's like hydro, and then there's 2 of them, so di. So it inhibits dihydrofolic acid reductase, which decreases DNA synthesis. Adverse effects are a little bit different from what previously learned, so ignore the picture and focus down here. You have injection site reactions, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, stomatitis, photosensitivity, and vaginal bleeding. Next, we'll move on to drugs for PCOS. So you can use a lot of different things here. You can use metformin, and so that's for insulin resistance, can help with menstrual irregularities and then also hirsutism. So this is my previous picture. Metformin is shown by this Mets baseball player. It decreases the production of glucose in the liver, which is why this is in the shape of a liver. And improves insulin sensitivity in the skeletal muscle. Adverse effects are nausea, diarrhea, weight loss, which is shown with these trees that get smaller here, and then lactic acidosis, so a lemon, because acidosis is, like lemons are acidic. You probably don't need to know all that, but it's a good review. You can use contraceptives, which can obviously be used for contraception. can help with menstrual irregularities and also hirsutism. You can use spironolactone for hirsutism and acne. So remember that spironolactone is an aldosterone antagonist. It's shown here by this picture of the spiral holding milk because lactose, lactone, spironolactone. And adverse effects are hyperkalemia, which is why there's a banana, because bananas have a lot of potassium in them. This is spelled wrong. It is supposed to be letrozole. So that's another drug for PCOS and infertility. So if you have a person who has PCOS and they are looking to get pregnant, that's a good one to use for them. And then you can also use bromocriptine, which is a dopamine agonist for hyperprolactinemic and ovulation. So bromocriptine was one that we learned previously. And so in this picture, I have Indiana Jones, and he's within a crypt. So cryptine, and within the crypt, he found the skulls of two brothers. So bromo, like bro, brothers, bromocriptine. Two skulls kind of helps you remember that it's a dopamine 2 and a dopamine 3 agonist. So those are all for PCOS. Now we move on to some cancer drugs. And so all these in pink are all for breast cancer, and I have that noted as well. So your first one, there's a couple different ways to remember the breast cancer drugs. One is these first two both start with T, so trastuzumab and tamoxifen, the TTs are for breast cancer. But if you can't remember that, I drew Hercules here because this brand name is Herceptin, like Herc. First word is Herc. And it binds to estrogen receptor ERB2 protein, which is aka HER2, to inhibit the growth of cells that express this enzyme. And so this is 2 Hercules. So 2 Hercules, so HER2, or he's growing an herb garden. ERB2. The next drug is tamoxifen, and so I have a tambourine because tambourine starts with tam, oxifen, and it is a estrogen. I'm blinking on what SERM means. It is selective estrogen receptor modifier. And so again, it's a estrogen, and I always, like I said, estrogen kind of Easter. So we have Easter bunny ears on top of this tambourine. Adverse effects are thrombosis, endometrial cancer, and hot flashes. And then you have raloxifene. And again, this is a drawing that I had drawn previously. I thought raloxifene sounded like Rolex. So here's this dude. He's got a really nice Rolex watch, and he's trying to hit on this girl. Again, it's a SERM. Oh, it was right there. I could have just read it. And then adverse effects are hot flashes. So she's got heat coming off of her, and then thromboembolism. So then there's 2 boxes in blue here. So those treat ovarian cancer. So again, these are previous drawings. So carboplatin was one that we learned before. Now we're doing carboplatin plus this hacelidixol. So I had previously drawn like a platinum car. So a car that looks like it's made out of platinum. And to add the paclitaxel, just think it's a pace car. So like, you know, when they're racing, there's usually one car that sets the pace for everyone else. So this is for ovarian cancer and endometrial cancer. But just stick, that's why I have it blue. It was mainly for ovarian. And so the MOA of carboplatin is that it cross-links DNA. So I have a cross on the curve for cross-links DNA. The paclitaxel prevents depolymerization of cellular microtubules. It's not shown in the picture. And then the adverse effects of carboplatin are shown in the picture. So you have this death-looking symbol for bone marrow suppression. This is early in my drawing, so I represent bone marrow suppression a little bit differently more recently. But then you have neuropathy. I think there's a little tiny brain on the window, and then I just wrote nausea, vomiting, which is SYN V. And then for P is also bone marrow suppression, and then alopecia, arthralgia, nausea, neuropathy, and hypersensitivity. So they're both really similar. Next is pembrolizumab or Keytruda, and that is for cervical cancer. So I had this lizard, and he's like in a tux. Because I always, for some reason, thought of like an undercover cop, and they're like PD, like there's a, like police department, PD. So they bind, and like undercover cops are usually like looking to like kill someone. So they bind to program cell death 1, so PD1, which blocks the interaction between PD1 and PDL1 and PDL2 and allows cytotoxic T cells to resume normal activity. He's kind of standing with his arms in a T. Not really, but just use your imagination. So cytotoxic T cells. And ignore this bottom one. Adverse effects are lymphoma, anemia, adrenal insufficiency, hypothyroidism, hyperglycemia, infusion reactions, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and elevated LFTs. So in the picture, I have infusion reactions shown on his tail. He's got little speckles. And that's about it. So unfortunately, there's a lot of AEs that are hard to remember. Okay. Next is olaparib, and this is for ovarian cancer. So I thought olaparib sounded like, Ola. And so this is the MOA is that it inhibits poly ADP ribose polymerase, which is PARP enzymes. PARP enzymes are involved in normal cellular homeostasis, which such as DNA transcription, cell cycle regulation, and DNA repair. So it says PARP. So PAR, I think of golf. So that's why I have a little golf hole there for PARP. And then it inhibits things that have to do with like DNA repair. So we have a DNA symbol with a wrench, like repair. Adverse effects are bone marrow suppression, nausea, so that's why we have this little nausea vag, fatigue, pneumonitis, and then thromboembolism. For endometrial cancer, we have bevacizumab. And so, again, this is a drawing from a long time ago. So we have a beaver who is in a vegetable garden, vegetable for VEGF. So this is a monoclonal antibody against VEGF. So the beaver is eating the vegetable. Adverse effects are fatigue, nausea, arthralgia, hypertension, and stomatitis. And We learned this in our heat module, so a lot of the side effects on this picture have to do with the eyes and not what's on this slide. So you just think of a nauseous, fatigued beaver. Okay, so just some other stuff that's on our PowerPoint. So CINV stands for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. So there's different grades, 1, 2, and 3. 1 is that they lose appetite without altering their eating habits. 2 is that they have decreased appetite without significant weight loss, but they're dehydrated or having malnutrition. And then grade 3 is that they don't have enough intake and need to be hospitalized. So that's the grading of nausea within CINV. Now I can grade the vomiting of CINV, which is graded on a scale of 1 to 5. So grade 1 is 1 to 2 episodes in 24 hours. Grade 2 is 3 to 5 episodes in 24 hours. 4, I just realized I forgot to add grade 3. Grade 3 is 6 or more episodes in 24 hours, and then grade 4 is life-threatening consequences, and then grade 5 was just listed, and we are assuming that it is death because what's worse than life-threatening consequences? You can also neutropenia with low neutrophil count with cancer, and so those are also graded, and they start with grade 3, 4, and 5. So 3 is neutrophils less than 1,000 at a temperature of 38.3. Grade 4 is life-threatening consequences. Grade 5 is death. So how do we treat chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting? Well, if they have really bad nausea and vomiting, you can use cisplatin, which I don't have a picture of. You can use cyclophosphamide, which is actually shown in this picture here by this cyclone, which is an alkylating agent. And then selected combination regimen. If they have moderate incidence, they can use carboplatin, which again is here, the carboplatin. You can use the cyclophosphamide again, the methotrexate, which again was right here, methotrexate. Doxorubicin, which is here. So doxorubicin I have with an anteater because this is an anthracycline. That's the drug category. And so it's an anteater that is riding a bicycle, anthracycline, and he has on his shirt OXO for doxo, DOXO, rubicin. And then isosfamide, which is here. The brand name is iFlex, which I thought sounded like iFlex. I flex my arm. And so you can read through the adverse effects there. On all of those both cyclophosphamide and isofamide cross-link DNA. So does carboplatin. So I have a cross in there. Going back to treating neutropenia, you can use antibiotics. So cefepime, which is a cephalosporin, meropenem, which is a carbapenem. Yeah. Piperacillin tazobactam, ciprofloxacin plus Vanco. You could use some anti-staph therapy. It's not super reliable, but if you did, you would use vancomycin, linezolid, and daptomycin. And then just in general, treatment for nausea and vomiting. You can use your 5-HT3, your serotonin receptor antagonist. So that is ondansetron, granasetron, dolasetron, and palansitron. So here in this picture, we have a granny who is dancing and she is doing the limbo to a piano song. So the granny is for granny citron. She is dancing on Dancitron. She is doing the limbo, do Lancitron. And it is to piano music, Palinestitron. I cannot say that one. And when she's doing the limbo, the height is 5'3", because this is a 5 height 3, 5-HT3 receptor antagonist. You can use corticosteroids such as dexamethasone. You can use substance neurokinin 1 receptor antagonists such as aprepitant and phosphoprepitant. Brand name is Emend. I don't have pictures for these. You can use dopamine 2 antagonists such as chlorpromazine or thorazine. You can use cannabinoids, benzodiazepines, and then olanzapine, which I believe is also a dopamine 2 antagonist. And just to finish up with a couple things from our fourth PowerPoint, we talk a little bit about postpartum depression. So you can use tricyclic antidepressants, which are these. So just a reminder, your TCAs are despiramine or norepinephrine. Sorry, I cannot pronounce these. Amitriptyline or Alavil, nortriptyline or Pamelor. And so the story behind this picture is that Elvis, so Alavil, Elvis, was really desperate, despiramine, to get to his significant other, Pamela, Pamelor. And so and it was too far to run, so he hopped on his tricycle for tricyclic antidepressants. So they are serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Adverse effects are cholinergic, anticholinergic, so they dry everything out. That's why there's a cactus in this picture. And they are fatal in overdose. So that's why we have this fatal symbol right here. And yep. You can use SSRIs, which is my original picture here. So you can use SSRIs such as Prozac. So in this picture, we have a potato sac for Prozac. Up here is a loft with some zoo animals. So it's a Zoloft or Zoloft. And then on the floor here is a package, a parcel for Paxil. And these are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. In this picture to demonstrate, I mean, you can just remember that from the name. And then adverse effects are nausea and weight gain, which is shown by this little scale. You can also, for postpartum depression, use SNRIs. So again, as a reminder, the SNRIs are venlafaxine or a fax machine, and duloxetine or Cymbalta. So we have symbols for Cymbalta. These are, again, serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Adverse effects are sedation, which is why there's a seed right here. Ugh, I totally just remembered that I'm not sharing the screen. I'm so sorry. Okay, I apologize. You can see now. I will review this. So SSRIs is in this picture. Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft. You can use SNRIs such as venlafaxine, Cymbalta. And then your tricyclic antidepressants. Elvis for Alavil. He was desperate. Despiramine to call Pamelor. I'm so sorry that did not show up. And then just, that's all I have picture-wise. I'm just going to talk now about a couple more drugs that are on our PowerPoint that I didn't have time to make pictures for. So you have brexanolone. brand name is Zulresso. This is a GABA receptor modulator. So again, this is still for postpartum depression. Its adverse effects are sedation, dizziness, dry mouth, sudden loss of consciousness. Has a REMS program with it. And then you can also use dextromethorphan, which I believe we have learned about again. It's an NMDA antagonist, a dopamine and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, which increases CNS exposure of DM. The NMDA antagonist. Adverse effects are dizziness, nausea. And then one last thing. So there are 3 drugs that you want to avoid in breastfeeding, and that is valproic acid, carbamazepine, and lithium. So that is the end of this video. I again apologize for the last little bit here. It's kind of messy, but thank you for watching.